everyone. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. Well, the legislative session's almost come to conclusion here at the end of May, and part of the consideration of writing a state budget is the Texas economy. Our Texas Insider Economic Council Chairman, Marc Flaster, is in attending a bankers conference, and we're going to visit with him about the economic outlook, both nationally and at the state level, and some of the underpinnings of the Texas economy, what may be changing and what's staying the same. Thanks for joining us, and we're pleased to be able to visit with Marc Flaster today. Well, Marc Flaster, Chairman of the Texas Insider Economic Council, we appreciate you taking the time to come in and visit with today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, Jim, it's always my pleasure, and at this particular time, I'm at risk, and so are you, of all these thunderstorms, and so far we got bright sunshine, so we have to enjoy it while we
Here
can.
in Central Texas. I want to jump right in. I know you're down in town working and visiting the Texas Bankers Association, our friends over there, but let's get right into some of that financial market and economic type analysis before we maybe move into some semi-political input from you. But I want to start off because the Federal Reserve has been in the news the last couple days. They're, of course, talking about the first quarter's economic results, the stock market's strength in the first 4 months, and whether or not to raise interest rates. Give us your thumbnail sketch on the economy in general and interest rates as we're moving forward for the next quarter into the middle of the year, perhaps.
Well, we had this discussion before. I'm still on the same theme as I have been, and important things to recognize is that one, the reports of the progress of the economy are all built on data that was not complete because of the partial government shutdown. So the first quarter GDP report, which came out at plus 3.2%.
That's gross domestic product, right?
Was based on information that was sketchy at best. Preliminary views were all in the twos, and some as far as one. Now some of those views have then gone into the second quarter and are expecting that number will be half of the first quarter number. So
really,
but the thing to recognize is that the Fed is committed to raise interest rates, and they are stupefied. They're stumbling over their shoelaces, if you want to call it that.
okay.
That they can't understand why the ingredients for inflation that they have outlined are not becoming apparent, so they can go forward with their strategy. And there are several reasons for this, and one of them is that they're basing all their theoretical thoughts on a failed theory called the Phillips curve that was developed over 50 years ago,
Okay.
and which says that basically low unemployment creates inflation, because if you have low unemployment, you're going to have to bid up labor, or to get labor to come to work for you, or to get labor to come into the labor force, that the demand for workers is at a sufficient level that the economy needs more, and it can't get more without bidding up the price of labor. And once the labor is then increased, then the value of the product that would be produced by this labor, whether a service or a product, would have to be raised to compensate the company for that production, or that expense, and that will then show up in the price indices, and therefore we get inflation.
And of course, you've got President Trump starting to be on the campaign trail talking about record low black unemployment, record low Hispanic unemployment, record number of women businesses starting. So he's bragging about what you're saying the Fed may view as a problem.
Well, they view it as that they're not getting the expansion of the cost of labor into the price of the product, and so the economy doesn't see rising prices. And one of the reasons why we don't see rising prices, not one of the reason, is that we are in a completely different time frame than we were in the 50s and 60s, which is where most of these theories were developed, and we have a access to our marketplace worldwide that is built on innovation, and that innovation is also creating destruction. So we have a destructive innovation methodology, if you want to call it, or I'm going to find a word here, but anyway, that is taking away some of the natural stables of our theoretical or our basic economy, that if A gets to B, then B definitely becomes C. And that's what the Fed has been using, that they said, oh, these things always follow in a progression, and they don't. We sit here with our iPhones, we sit here with companies that had a grounding in a product. Take a simple thing like automobiles. Okay? Automobile sales are going down.
Okay.
One of the reasons why they're going down is they say, oh, there's a shift. People don't want the car; they want the SUV. We live in an urban planet today, urban jungle. I live in New York City. You don't want to drive a sedan today because it's so low on the ground. You drive through New York City and you're right at the bottom of the car. So you need something higher up, but whatever. Okay. But comes along Uber.
Uber and Lyft,
Right,
yes.
and Lyft. And all of a sudden, you have an alternative transportation system or access that it does not require you to own the car. And so if you want to go somewhere, you just put up your hand or dial on your iPhone, and you've got some transportation that will take you.
Okay, I've got to interrupt you because before we get into that, I just want to double check and make sure I understand you. The Federal Reserve, you still think they're going to be raising interest rates before the end of the year?
No, I do not.
You do not?
I do not. They're threatening it. Chairman Powell, in his news commentary yesterday after the release of the minutes, said there's forces that are non-recurring that have masked the true underlying events or the forces that are going to become apparent.
Okay.
When they become apparent, then we will be able to demonstrate that we were right and that we're on the right track, and we'll be able to go forward.
So that's on hold. Then, as you were getting into there, let's talk about the guts of the economic expansion, because a lot of folks have been so excited and focusing on the technology aspect of the last 5 years' growth. But I think what you're saying, it's more the disruption and the innovative part of an economic growth cycle that's going on right now with the Ubers and the telephones.
That's one example. Okay, but the other thing that's going on is that our forecast or our growth is our growth path has changed. The world growth path has changed. We're not only much more interconnected today than we had been in the past, but we're also becoming more protective. So we have countries who are major partners who are going out of their way to close their borders.
Really?
And Donald Trump is not alone. Okay? This whole thing really started in Europe because there was a migration out of South America and some of the encumbered political countries in those areas that were coming into Europe, and the complaint was that they were going to take jobs, which is what we hear here, and so they closed their borders, and they said, well, we don't want those people here, and so what's the first thing that happened? We found that we have an aging population. Japan is the best example. Japan has very little in-migration. One reason is that no one can understand the language or learn it, and so Japan now has not only a negative GDP, minus interest rates, trying to force the country. Said interest rates is our Federal Reserve Board says interest rates drive economic activity. They're so out to lunch. It's important.
I think it was our friends at IBC Bank that you know who mentioned to me the other day the country of Japan sells more adult diapers than they do baby diapers because of this aging population.
And they have a problem with their pensions because there are fewer people working, and so there are fewer people and there are more people who are receiving and the country was very generous in their pensions, so they now have a difficulty in making a budget that will not only support their country but also support their people.
Which we're seeing here too. Folks, I want to thank you again for joining us for this edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. We're visiting with our chairman of the Texas Insider Economic Council, Marc Flaster. Marc, I want to drill down a little bit more. You and I have talked about this before. We've got this disruptive economy where somebody told me the other day our largest retailer owns no stores, it's Amazon. Our largest auto company owns no cars, it's Uber. Our largest hotel company owns no hotels, Airbnb. This is the type of thing you're talking about that millennials are demanding, and it's a huge economic shift toward an economy that nobody's experiencing. The forecasters don't know how to necessarily
Well, the
predict.
company, for just take the Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
the hotel industry never expected this, and so they're losing people to use their service when they visit cities. And you have a new group of people today who are terribly mobile in a different way. They're visitors. They want to travel all over the world. They want to visit. They want to see things for themselves. They want a personal experience, and they're willing to give up a lot of what I would call creature comforts. I don't travel that way. I doubt if anyone
Mm-hmm.
that we travel that way, but they're willing to travel that way, and
Interesting.
they'll put up with let's say a low cost and less cost for personal comfort, but they want to have the personal experience. So what do you hear Marriott do? Just the other day, they announced that they are developing a service that will now rent homes.
Marriott.
Marriott. So
Really?
you're going to have your Airbnb will give you a room in somebody's apartment. Marriott will give you a house,
Interesting.
okay, and you can stay a couple of days.
And these
Okay.
folks don't want to buy homes. They don't want to hold down jobs. They want to, as you've said before, experience life is
Yes,
their goal.
and so to meet their demand and their service, okay, requires a whole new change in infrastructure and provision of service. Service is the big word, and so when you look at the economy and you say what's the biggest growing quadrant, it's service related. And so what are the jobs that everyone is complaining about or worried about that these border crossers
Mm-hmm.
what are the jobs that they don't want the job in that be doctors and lawyers and executives of companies. They want to be in the service trades where nobody else wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to come in and work in the entry level areas, and they're willing to take those jobs. A simple thing is that the president said, if you guys are so worried about how I'm treating these people on the border, he said, I'm going to distribute into sanctuary cities. So Florida
did.
says, bring it on. He said, first thing we're going to do is we're going to teach them how to be a nurse or a bedpan chaser. But we
Really?
need people in the hospitals that can help us deal with all the people that are in the hospitals.
In God's holding room, as they call Florida, right?
And-
They need hospital
And
help.
so they can't get people to take those jobs. And here we got people banging up, who are threatening our borders, so to speak, and they'll take those jobs. They'll take anything. One of the things that are very interesting to me is all the complaints about job availability and mobility is that there was a piece that was done in the New York Times. We won't talk about
Okay.
that newspaper anyway. And it was a polar diagram of various industries and taking a job and then in a spider method demonstrating where that job could lead within that company. So if you were to get a job at Target and your job as an entry-level person was to refill the shelves as the product was being sold, and said, well, what comes from that? Well, there could be the manager of that department. There could be a delivery agent. There could be a whole list of things that would come from that. The problem is that none of these people who are complaining see that as an avenue for their life. They say, I won't take the first job. That's below me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they want that other job that requires some management skill or experience, and they say, well, I could do that without having any background.
It's the attitude of the millennial. I want to ask you, you mentioned there, and I'd intended to bring this up, because of the Mueller report recently and the border situation, which you referred to, are things like the presidential Mueller report and the Democrat focus on socialism by their candidates and the border situation, are those even on the radar screens of the financial markets these days?
Oh, I think everything has to be.
Really?
It has to be. Because in some way it's going to influence lots of things. But I said that the just a simple idea like impeaching the president.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Pelosi the other day came out and said that it would destroy our party. I said we have to be focused on getting somebody that one that we can all circle around as being our candidate and then is electable.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to end up dispersing all our effort in thinking about something that's just to tie everybody up and is going to cause dissension within our own party, then we'll never get to the finish line on the thing that's most important to us, and that's the 2020 election.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things, as people think through them and understand what is required to take the next step, they say, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's not going there.
Okay, one final question for Marc Flaster, the chairman of our Texas Insider Economic Council. Marc, you're here visiting the Texas Bankers Association annual convention. You've got your pulse on the Texas economy. I know you've said the Houston real estate market's going strong in previous visits. What's the read you see across the state in terms of our continued economic growth?
Well, the state is in great shape, not just good shape, great shape. Perriman put out a report the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Short term, he said. Short term. I don't know how short term is, but
Okay.
he made some nice comments about the state's growth. The state of Texas. Let me give you 5 minutes worth of something here that may or may not get me back to visit you again. But the state of Texas has been known as an energy provider, and its history has been focused on two things: ranching and energy. And energy has usurped ranching, although there's a lot of wealth in land holdings, but it's energy that has taken it forward.
Okay.
And with the state of the world and the uncertainty of the politics of many of the countries, the whole idea, the development again and innovation and disruption of fracking
Mm-hmm.
that allowed for a discovery and withdrawal of natural resources in a whole different way. And
Made the Permian Basin the largest oil reserve on the face of the globe now.
And what it's done, it's right now the United States is the largest producer of oil in the world. I left out the word gas because when the oil comes up, and one of the things we see every time you see a picture of what's going on in Saudi Arabia is all these things on fire
Flaring.
because they flare away the gas. Well, you want to talk about environment, okay? And we'll touch base real quickly. The biggest problem in this environment is not the Twizzlers in your coffee cup. It's not the
Straws
pop-ups
and
that go,
plastic.
whatever they call it, and that are put in the box to protect the.
Maine outlawed styrofoam to-go boxes the other day.
Okay, that's all garbage. Okay,
Okay.
It's going the wrong way, focusing on the wrong problem. Okay, may make people feel good that they said something, but it didn't create or do anything for the ultimate problem.
What's the problem?
The ultimate problem is that almost 3/4 of the world burns coal.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to have an electric automobile? Great. I'm glad you have an electric automobile. You can go 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, and then you go nowhere because you've used up all the electricity. Okay.
And you go plug in.
But the important thing is, in order to get that electricity, somebody had to produce it. And that big stack up there, belching all that garbage out there, that's coal-fired energy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Europe is the biggest, we'll say, they produce them. Belgium and Poland are the biggest polluters in Western Europe. And
Really?
just the other day, a couple of guys here in Texas came up with a brilliant idea that not only do we have to turn our natural gas into liquid natural gas, but we have to get a contract somewhere where we can sell it.
To export.
And so all the import terminals that were being built to bring oil into the United States, because we're a big consumer of energy, are now being converted to LNG exporters. And the other day, we had, actually, and I wrote about this in my blog, we had a contract cut in Poland to deliver, to
Really?
provide natural gas.
Okay, well, Marc Flaster, chairman of the Texas Insider Economic Council, we're going to leave it on that positive note for the state of Texas, and hope you'll come back soon. We really appreciate your input as always.
Thank you. We never got to taxes, but we'll talk about it.
That's all right.
Taxes in Texas, right?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Folks, we appreciate you joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. Have a great day.